Attitude. And I started to read some of it earlier, and I am going to read this book. It is absolutely fascinating. Brian, how old are you? He's 17 years old. Did you finish it? When did you finish it? When he was 16. So thank you everyone for coming. He is selling his book today. And with no further ado, Brian. Thanks, Brian. Woo-hoo.
Well, in case you guys didn't already know, my name is Brian Esparza. I'm 17 years old, and I'm what? Oh, okay. And I'm a senior at Redmond High School. Um, I've been living in Redmond since 2004, since I was maybe like 8 years old, and I must say that, you know, after 3 years in high school, those are probably the best 3 years of my life. They've carried the best memories, the best moments. Maybe not the best grades, but it was fun. Are there any Redmond High School alumni or current students here today? Awesome. Yeah. So, setting the tone for high school, let me start talking about my book because that's why I'm up here. Um, this is my pride and joy. This is my first novel, Attitude. Um, just as a little activity for you guys, I want you all to look at the cover of this book, and I don't want you to say it out loud. I don't want you to like. I just want you to picture in your mind the first thing that comes into your head. All right. So, who here is thinking of smoking or smoking? Very, very good. Now you see, Attitude follows the story of a kid named Jason Espinoza. He's a quiet kid, like he's a little different, you know. He's quiet. He's a nice guy. People say he's a nice guy. He's to himself, and what makes him just a little different than everyone else is that he's superstitious. Every day, every day for almost the whole year, every year, he wears the same getup. He has a black or white shirt, a pair of jeans, pair of black sneakers, a gray jacket, and most importantly, his gray beanie. People have tried to figure out why he dresses the same way because people think it's a little too simple. It's a little too weird for him to dress this way. But, people have approached him, tried to figure it out, but only he knows the real answer. And, you know, throughout high school, he goes through high school and he looks for the one thing he wants in life because he's lost. He doesn't know what he wants in life. He's looking through all these things. He's like, does he want to have sex? Does he want to try drugs? Does he want to get straight A's? But ultimately, the one thing he wants in life is to be himself. He and part of being yourself is being content with who you are, and most importantly, happy with who you are. And growing up, Jason had a friend. Jason has a best friend, and his name, you're gonna come to know him as Derek. Now, Derek is a little different than Jason. Derek is very outgoing. He's very social. He loves to meet new people, and he's a very open person. And then he ended up being friends with a kid like Jason. He became friends with Jason, and the minute he met Jason, he didn't like his first name. He didn't like the name Jason, but then he looked at his last name, Espinoza, and he thought it was different. It was exotic. And because Jason was, to himself, and Derek was a little outgoing, he decided to introduce Jason to people. And instead of introducing him as Jason, they got to know him as Espinoza or Spinoza. They just dropped the E. And so that became his nickname throughout the whole thing. And when he entered high school, he decided I'm gonna stick with Derek. I'm gonna like be his friend. I'm still gonna be because he was there for me and all that. And you know, come sophomore year of high school, Derek started to smoke. He started not tobacco. No, he didn't smoke tobacco at the time. He started smoking marijuana, and it was different. And at the time, Jason had no prior knowledge of it. An older brother he had an older brother that didn't smoke. There was something in the family history, but he didn't really know anything about it. And one day, he's a skate park kid. He saw Derek at the skate park smoking, and then Jason thought, why don't I try it for the first time? And with a little bit of peer pressure, he was able to try smoking. And after he tried smoking, it was just a little different for him. It led him on this new path this new path of experiences. And he wanted to try smoking marijuana just to see where it would go, just to see if it would lead into happiness, good experiences. And as you read the book, you'll realize that with all these new experiences, he's kind of coming out of his shell. He's doing things that he never thought of doing, and it was all because of this one drug. And you know, coming back to me, I've been writing since I was about 12 years old. I've been writing since 12 years old, and I went through a lot of phases when I was young, like all kids. I wanted to become a wrestler. I wanted to become a writer, and I remember I played lacrosse for about a year. I didn't want to because I hate sports. I hate playing sports, but I did it anyway because just to give it a shot. And one day, my dad actually saw me writing. I used to write short stories, like little 2-page stories. And he came up to me one day and he was like, "How about this?" And this is me. I was 12 years old at the time. If you can write a book, 100 pages, if you can write over 100 pages of a book that makes sense, it flows, and it sounds good, then I'll find a publisher for you. And so here's me at 12 years old. It's like, I'm gonna make a lot of money. and so I decided that was it for me. From all of middle school, I tried to write about a lot of things. I tried to write about rock and roll. I tried to write about skateboarding. I tried to write about wrestling. I even tried writing about the Greasers. And yeah, that was my worst attempt. And all of them either became, bad knockoffs. I remember the Greasers turned into the Outsiders. And and I did all these things, and I thought, I'm gonna take a break from writing because all my ideas aren't going anywhere. So I'm gonna spend my first year of high school no writing. And my first year of high school, that was when I tried smoking marijuana for the first time, and that did open my eyes. It did open my eyes to different things, and it led me to new experiences. And then come junior year, I want to get back into writing, and then I pick up 3 books, some of them from the school and some on my own. I remember picking up 2 books, and they were Catcher in the Rye and The Absolute True Diary of a Part-Time Indian. And, I picked them up because they're about teenagers. They're about teenagers and going through their day-to-day lives. And the 3rd book I picked up, or that I tried to pick up, was a book called Go Ask Alice. Go Ask Alice, from what I tried to read, if I remember, it was about this girl who went to a party. She tried some type of drug at a party, and she became ultimately depressed, ultimately just down with life. And I knew what that drug was, and I've seen people with that drug, and I've seen people on that drug. And the way the book described it, they're very depressed. She was very sad all the time. It was very depressing, and it was weird to read about because I know those types of people. They're happy. They're happy. They're jittery. They love to be alive. And so when I would read the reviews on them, which I don't normally do, but I read them, and then I found out it was an anti-drug book. This is how you keep kids away from drugs. And then I looked up the author, and the author hasn't done any type of drug in her life, no alcohol in her life. She's very pure. And then I thought, and that it clicked in me that I thought, I'm in high school, just like the girl that she wrote about. I've done my fair share of experimenting. I've had my fair share of, memories and experiences. I want to write a book about my experiences because it's through my eyes, a teenager's eyes. I look at guys like Sherman Alexie and J.D. Salinger who read the books that, they're favorite books of mine, and they emulate the teenage voice. But you have to remember that they were in their 30s, 40s, and I think 50s, something like that. So they have the mindset of someone older than a teenager. And when you look at someone like me, I'm 17. I still have the mindset of a teenager. I know exactly how they talk, how they act, and I can sure write like them too. And so I spent all my junior year writing this book, and it took me. I was so into it. I remember I skipped so much homework and failed so many tests trying to get this done because I just wanted to get it done. And when I remember I was sitting in my bed in March of this year, and that's when I first finished it. I was the happiest person in the world. It was 126 pages, I think, and then I was like, yes, now all I have to do is just get up, show this to my dad, find an editor for it, find a publisher for it, and I will have a physical copy in my hand in 2 months. Who here thinks I got it done in 2 months? Thank God. Because I had no knowledge of how publishing worked. And so I was looking around, I was trying to find an editor, and then I run into one of my friends. And I show her the book, and she's like, wow, this is a really good book. Why don't you get an editor for it? I'm like, because I don't know anybody. And she's like, why don't you go to my old English teacher? And I would say her name, but I don't want to, but you know. She's like, why don't you go to my old English teacher? She's really chill. She doesn't care if you swear, what you talk about, as long as you're passionate about your writing. And so I thought, okay. She told me what room to go to. And I walk in, and I tell her about it. I had never met her before, but I just straight up told her, I wrote a book, and I would like you to edit it, because I got recommended to. And she told me, I'll try to do it, but like a lot of teachers, I'm really busy. She's like, all right, so I'll give you a month. She's like, all right, I'll have this done at the end of April. And so I'm running around, like, just trying to find publishers, telling people about it. People are reading it. People are badgering me for copies, and it's only been done for a week. And so I'm really happy. A lot of people know about this because I expected it to be done editing at the end of April. And so at the end of April, I see the teacher again. It's like, oh yeah, I didn't have time to do it, but I'm still gonna try to do it. Come see me in another 2 months. And I was running out of time, and so I go back to my dad. I'm like, I want this out now because so I know how to talk about it. I know how to read about it. And then he's like, all right, let's look up how much a real editor costs. They cost about $4,000. And I was thinking about it, and I thought back to when I was 12, and I'm like, my dad said he would fund this book, and he would publish it, fund everything, but I don't think it would be $4,000. And so I'm kind of down on my luck. I don't know where to go. And my dad had one last idea. He thought, why don't I pay that teacher to do it? And I was a little skeptical about that because I don't know like if it's right or if it's wrong. But then he's like, here, take $400, go to your teacher and like see if she'll do it. And so I walk in, and she knew exactly why I was in there. And so she's just like, I don't really have time to do it. I'm really busy. And all I had to say were these words, and she responded like this. I told her, my dad was actually thinking of paying you. And she's like, oh. Now you see, Brian, the whole game changes when money is involved. So we come to an agreement, and by the end of June, I had it all done. I had it all edited, and I started to look for publishers. And when I was young, you know, I wanted to be hooked up by a big company. But now that I'm older, I read about those people who would like look through it. They won't even read it. They would read the first 2 pages. If they don't like it, they'll throw it away. And I didn't have that kind of time because even if I did get hooked up, it would take another 3-4 months to get a call back. And so I thought, why don't I go to self-publishing? You know, I can publish it now, and it's a lot faster, and it's a lot cheaper. So I come up, and I go to Amazon. And I did not know this for the longest time, but Amazon actually publishes books. And it was cool because they gave me creative control. Like, I made this cover myself. My interior was myself. And I'm my own boss, too. Like, another thing that I didn't want from a big company is that they can drop you at any time. Like, if your book doesn't sell a certain amount within a certain month, they will drop you, and you won't, you know, be with them anymore. I'm my own boss. I can choose when to promote it. I don't care if I sell 2 copies in a month or 15 copies in a month. It's still going to be the same for me. And, you know, my dad funded it, and then by middle of July, I was messaging a friend, and it was midnight. I was messaging her, and like, I got an email from Amazon saying like, we just approved of it. All you have to do is click here and follow directions. I'm like, cool. So I'm looking through it. It all looks good. And then when I click on it, I see it on all these different websites. And I have to say that was probably the happiest moment of my life when I first saw the book. You know, up on Amazon, up on CreateSpace, up on Barnes & Noble. I didn't even know I'd make it there. And like, I was so happy that I woke up my parents. I shoved my computer in their face. I'm like, look what just happened. It took me so long, but I did it. I had it done. And, but you know, it was a long process, and I still can't believe I'm standing up here today. Thank you. Now, damn, I've been talking really fast, aren't I? Right now, I'm going to read a passage to you guys, but before I do, who here has ever been to homecoming? Well, yeah. All right. Who here had ever thought about going to homecoming? All right. All right, well, when you look at Jason in himself, he's a little he's quiet into himself, like I said. And he wasn't really too fond of school events. He didn't like going to football games. He didn't like dances. He never went to a dance. But, he went from like experience, or like secondhand. Derek had gone, his friend Omar had gone. They're all like, it's a waste of time. You don't want to go. And Derek, Omar, and Jason they're a trio. They're a clique. So they always hang out with each other. They always agree with each other. So when you reach the junior year of this book, they're like, we're not going to homecoming. We're not going to do anything. And then this girl comes up. A girl named Amber came up, and she took a liking to Derek. They click. And of course, Amber has her friends. She has friends named Jen and Leah. Jen's hot blonde girl, like stereotypical hot blonde girl. And she looks at Omar and is just like, let's go out. And so like that leaves Jason and this girl named Leah. Leah apparently is exactly like him. They're both to themselves, they're both quiet, and they're both, they both listen to their friends. They're both influenced by their friends. And so Derek comes up and he's like, I think I'm gonna make a move on Amber and ask her to homecoming. And that's kind of how this story is gonna start. And but the thing is, Derek didn't want to go alone. He wanted someone to go with. And he looked at Omar, he's like, no, I'm not going. It's a waste of time. And so he goes to Jason, because Jason is very vulnerable. He always listens to Derek somehow, some way. And, so the passage I'm going to read to you, I'm not going to read all of it because it's kind of a long chapter. I'm going to read to you guys the first 2 or 3 pages of it. And this will kind of show you kind of how Jason gets persuaded in many ways. And before I read this, I see that there are kids in the room. I see that there are a lot of people in here. Before I read it, I have to remind you guys that this is from the perspective and told through the eyes of a teenager. So there is a number of swearing, there's a number of drugs involved, there's a number of smoking involved. So if you need to leave the room, I'm gonna try and censor myself through this reading, but if you feel like you need to leave the room or are a little uncomfortable, you can do that now. All right, cool. All right. Chapter 10, Homecoming Blues. Let me tell you a quick little story about my brother. In his years of high school, he wasn't very open outside of his friend circle. He didn't have a girlfriend, didn't attend homecoming or prom. He slipped by classes and didn't really go above and beyond. One day during his senior year, he returned home just feeling different. He was really focused. He decided to focus on his studies, catch up on his work, and he ended up with a B average. He's back to normal now, and he even has a college degree. Looking at how he used to be, I know I need to do something different with my high school life. Now that I'm in high school, I'm also hoping not to follow in his footsteps. However, much like him, I wasn't fond of homecoming or any school events. It just seemed like a waste of time to me. But this year, persuasion allowed me to think the other way. The weekend flew by and Monday hit us. We were 2 weeks away from homecoming. I got a text from Derek as I was walking home, which was a little out of the ordinary, considering we only primarily hung out on weekends. Hey, I have bro advice for you, he said. What's up? I replied. He was quick to respond. I think I'm going to ask Amber to homecoming. That statement surprised me a little because Derek hated homecoming from past experience. He described it as boring and a waste of time, probably because he didn't get laid. Do it, I said, trying to show support for him. He responded back, you should ask someone too. I didn't want to say anything, so I just left it at that. I sat on the couch when I returned home. And I started thinking to myself, he's probably thinking of some really big speech to give me. I don't want to go, and there's no reason for me to go. I'm going to stick by my word and say, there's a ring at my doorbell. Just do it, I heard him yell through the door. I opened the door and responded, no. He grabbed me by the collar and dragged me to his house. Listen to me, Spinoza. We're only in high school for another 2 years. You don't want to look back on a moment like this and say, what if? I smiled. You sound like my mom. Derek stuck a cigarette in my mouth and continued. Dude, I know, homecoming in itself is pretty stupid, but it's the stuff you do before and after that makes everything worth it. Do you want to get laid? I nodded my head. Every guy our age wants to get laid. But homecoming? You went last year and just complained all day about how big of a waste of time it was. He's like, he shook his head. Dude, just don't take my word for it. And besides, I have the perfect person for you to ask. Who's that? Leah. I choked when I blew out and I flipped him off. Derek spoke in a softer tone. Come on, man, it'll be good for you. Besides, I've been talking to Jen. Derek handed me his phone and showed me the conversations they had. They talked about their theories on Leah and I as a couple. Still no, I said. Derek sighed. Fine, if you're not going to pull through, then at least hear out Amber. She was being a chill homie this week. I had a feeling what he was about to say was a lie, but I decided I'd hear it anyway. All right, so I was chilling with Amber and Leah the other day, and while I was spacing out, Amber was just like, Leah, you should talk to Spinoza. He seems really nice. And dude, I'm not even joking. Her face turned bright red. And then Leah was just like, yeah, I actually think Spinoza's kind of cute. I smiled at that. Most of the girls I've met, and even some guys have always seen me as the cute, nice guy. But for some reason, hearing that, as if Leah was saying it, just made things a little different. Fine, I guess I kind of have to do it now. Derek had a large grin on his face. Hell yeah. Derek texted Jen my decision. I soon got a text from her as well. Here, text Leah to get to know her a little better. Derek then took my phone. All right, so you don't screw this up, I'm gonna text her through your phone for now. That way, when the awkward barrier is broken between you two, it won't be as bad. I put Derek in charge of my phone for a couple hours while I took a nap on his couch. I awoke to Derek beating my stomach with a pillow, like he always does. All right, you're awake. We have a slight issue. He showed me my phone. In 2 hours' time, Derek and Leah sent a total of about 10 texts. At one point, Leah didn't even respond to some of his messages for a whole hour. I texted Jen our little problem, and she just laughed at the situation. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, she's a little technology challenged. I would suggest calling her, but it's a little hard to have a conversation without having an awkward silence ever so often. Good luck. I sighed. Guess I gotta deal with what I got. For about a week, I put up with the limited texting. In that time, I figured out Jen wasn't messing with me. She was quiet and to herself. Even when I broke the awkward barrier myself, things still felt the same. Finally, homecoming was a week away, and although I still didn't know Leah as well as I should have, I met up with Derek again to figure out how to ask her. We were sitting in his house that Sunday when he tossed me a fortune cookie. I cracked it open and read the fortune. Amber, will you go to homecoming with me? That's pretty clever, I said. Damn right it is. I spent $20 to custom make these. We walked out to the backyard to talk. During our talk, we tossed ideas around for the way I would ask Leah. Should I get her a basic flower and some chocolates? I suggested. He shook his head. You gotta get a little creative, Derek said. He started searching on his phone for creative ideas. Let's see. You can't play guitar. You're tone deaf like me. Oh, look at this. He played a video of a guy slipping a witty poem about homecoming into a box of candy. It was simple and clever at the same time. I spoke without thinking. All right, I'll do it. In the back of my mind, I was lying to myself. But at the same time, I thought, hey, why not? We went back to school on Monday morning, and I sat down with Derek, Jen, and the rest of the gang. Leah and I caught eyes, and we smiled at each other as she walked past us. Homecoming? Omar asked. I nodded. Jen joined our conversation. Do it soon, Spinoza. You gotta give girls time to plan this kind of stuff. I thought about the week. Wednesday, I'll do it, I said. Derek patted my back as well as everyone else as we went our separate ways to go to class. As I walked up the stairs, I noticed the nervous looking kid, about as tall as me, carrying a box of chocolates with him. Good luck to you, I thought. By the time I got home, my mind was set on what I was going to do. I was gonna buy everything I needed tomorrow, come up with some cheap poem, and ask her on Wednesday. Throughout the day, I slowly gained more interest in homecoming, and at one point, I was actually looking forward to the whole thing. Then, I got a text. I took out my phone and saw a text from Jen. Spinoza, I have bad news. I didn't even respond before she sent another text. Steven asked her, after school today. I was puzzled. Who's Steven? I asked. I dug up my old yearbook and examined his school photo. It's that nervous white kid. Steven wasn't so much a friend of the girls, more like an associate who would pop in and out of their lives ever so often. According to the girls, he's an innocent kid, and I actually had a class with him. He seemed pretty cool, but still, this kind of messed everything up. So what would you suggest? I asked Jen. Oh, I'd still do it. Leah actually hates Steve, but she is so pure and sweet that she said yes just to be nice. She also thought no one was going to ask her. I rolled my eyes at that and didn't respond. Jen got tired of waiting and sent me another text. Look, Spinoza, she likes you. I'd ask her out when homecoming passes. I never wanted a relationship with Leah. Sure, we were both awkward, we still had our V cards, and as Omar once put it, we were made for each other. But awkward plus awkward equals some weird answer that I don't even want to think about. We'll see. Now, from what I just read, if I were you guys, I'd be thinking of a couple things. Does he really go to homecoming? Does he really sweep Leah off her feet? Does soul food books get involved? Yeah, you'll have to read to find out. But yeah, from what I just read and the way Derek and Jason talk to each other, that is about average for the way Jason talks to people. He's very open he's very social, but at the same time, he's very quiet. If you start talking to him, he'll join conversation. He'll start talking about whatever the heck you're talking about. And keep in mind that there is a lot of swearing within this book, and I was censoring myself because I noticed that there were some children in the room, and I didn't want to, make any parents mad. But yes, there is some swearing in this book. There is a lot of things in this book that I wish I could read, but I would be up here all day. But yeah, Jason is the thing you're gonna find out about Jason is that in his search for happiness, he tried a lot of things, and I chose to write it this way because I'm exactly like him. I'm very quiet. I'm very awkward at times. In case you haven't noticed, I've probably been stuttering while I'm up here. But he chose to try marijuana. He chose to try and ask Leah to homecoming and do numerous things because he was curious. And that's what a lot of teenagers are. They're curious about things. In terms of drugs and in terms of marijuana, for someone to try it, it's not because they're fiending. It's not because they're gonna become addicts. It's because they're curious. If someone told you don't touch that wall or don't touch that piano, what are you gonna do? Yeah, you're gonna touch the piano because you're curious. Why can't I touch the piano? What's gonna happen if I touch it? So you touch it to see what happens. And same goes for when Jason tried marijuana. He grew up, and I'm sure a lot of kids grew up thinking their parents and people around them would say, drugs are bad for you, don't do it. They're gonna ruin your lives or something like that. Jason grew up the same way. And so when he went to the skate park that day and he found Derek and he offered him a hit of marijuana, he thought, maybe my parents are wrong, or maybe, how would they know? I don't think they've tried it. If I try it, I would know why. Or let's see if this drug is as bad for me as they say it is. And that's what life is. You live and you learn, and sometimes when you try things, you screw up and you learn from that. And sometimes you find real happiness in what you do. You have opportunity. And that's why I wrote about this. And I wrote about teenagers because teenagers are very curious. They do most of their experimenting when they're young because they're young and stupid. And looking at Jason now, looking at Jason and the way he evolves throughout this book, all he ever wanted to do was be happy, but in order to be happy, you have to try new things, and that's what he did. And that's why I wrote it. Any questions? Any questions regarding me, the book, or Jason as a character? Yes. Yes, I will be signing the book. Any other questions? All right. Thank you.
I got one last question, actually. If you were going to give advice to anyone going into Redmond High School now, what kind of advice would you give them from one tier to another?
I would say don't try to fit in, really. Like I would look at freshmen sometimes and they'd be very lost trying to like get in with people, trying to find classes. Just go with the flow and don't be afraid to ask questions, whatever you do. Because I remember I dealt with this in junior high. I did not want to ask questions. I would look at my schedule and be like, "Where's the E wing? Where's the B wing?" And I'd like go to the opposite side of the school trying to find it. When I entered high school, I would just ask someone like, "Hey, where's this?" And be like, "Oh, it's right over there." You just can't be afraid to ask questions or just open your mouth, really. And that's my advice I would give.
Another round of applause for the board.
And if you haven't seen the setup, Brian's got his books over on the table here for on display and for sale, I imagine, and he'd be happy to talk with you in more detail and do some signings and stuff like that. You know, part of the mission we here at Habit Soul Food is to encourage these young artists in their craft, and it's great to see what comes out of that. And I appreciate you all being here today, and thanks for your support.